I'm one of those who would be very, very surprised if there isn't life outside our planetary system. I would be even very surprised if there hasn't been civilizations in one form or another existing in the cosmos, probably come and gone. You know, we have this 14 billion years of existence before we came here, and it seems a great waste of space and time for just us to be here. Now, as far as the Giza necropolis is concerned, I personally don't believe that aliens built the Giza pyramids. However, I certainly believe that whoever designed the Giza necropolis, particularly the Great Pyramid, had a very advanced technology, a very advanced knowledge of science. It doesn't take a rocket engineer, I'm a construction engineer, to see this at a glance. We're looking at a monument that is still astounding us. We don't understand how it was built, why it was built, who built it. It's a mystery. And we've got a mystery to resolve. And there are certain elements in the construction of the Great Pyramid and the monuments around it that are baffling to engineers, are baffling to architects, are baffling to structural engineers, the people who can judge this, not humanists like Egyptologists and archaeologists who throw in their own views. There are experts who have looked at this. I myself am a construction engineer. I've examined this with structural engineers, high-level structural engineers from France and England. I've had architects look at this. And the conclusion is that there are certain elements of the construction of this monument and some of the structures around it that we can't explain. For example, take the Great Pyramid. Apart from its size and precision, there are certain things that baffle engineers, things that Egyptologists don't think much about. For example, one of the things that I'm baffled to this day is that the Great Pyramid has 2.5 million blocks. Now you can imagine it's an incredible Lego puzzle to put this together. Now, you would have thought today, if we were going to build a monument such as the Great Pyramid, one of the things we would like to have to make the job easier, with the task is already very difficult to bring the blocks and lift them, but to make the task easier, we want the blocks to be of standard size. You know, it's like providing a bricklayer to build a house in the United States, which would require about 100,000 bricks, and then all the bricks are of different size. It'll go bananas. You know, it's a crazy thing to do. And yet, the Great Pyramid has 203 levels, 3 courses, 203 courses. None of these courses are of the same height. And none of the blocks are of the same length. To me, it's a puzzling thing. Why would they want to complicate their life so much? We're looking at people who not only had this complication, but managed to raise a monument with this complication, with this perfection, aligned to the cardinal direction with a precision of 5% of a degree, to a height of 146 meters, perfectly built. Now we're looking at something that even today engineers are baffled. We now go to the interior design of the pyramid. As you know, you enter from an entrance passage, you ascend along an ascending corridor that is about 1 meter high, so you have to crouch, and then you emerge in this stunning Grand Gallery. Grand Gallery is almost 50 meters long. It's 9 meters high. You could put almost a cathedral in there. It's built on a slope of 26.5 degrees. It's a nightmare to build this. The blocks there are so well precisely placed that even today we would have trouble placing blocks at that level, at that height, in this complex structure with that kind of precision. You can't put a blade through them. And yet we're told the people who did this, at the time the wheel wasn't yet discovered. They didn't have iron. They didn't have the pulley. In fact, they had nothing. You know, they had brutal manpower, sticks and ropes. Doesn't make sense. You know, we're baffled. Today, an engineer would say, listen, if you tell me to build this monument with this precision, with these kind of blocks, just using human power, with no machines, no tools, no iron, nothing, I don't know how to do it, you know, let alone build it so precisely. So these are the big questions that are yet unanswered. Then you go in the King's Chamber. Now the Great Pyramid itself, the core of the pyramid and the casing stone that doesn't exist now, but it was cased, was of local limestone. But the King's Chamber is built of blocks and beams that are of granite. Granite is a very hard stone. Not only it's very difficult to cut, but they imported this granite because it doesn't exist in the area of the pyramid. You have to bring it from 600 miles further south, from the region of Aswan. Baffling. How did they cut this at the quarry? How did they load it on the barges? How did they sail it down, blocks of 70, 80 tons? How did they discharge them? How did they carry them up the Gizeh Rapids? And how they lifted them up at 50 meters height and placed them with that kind of precision? I mean, today would be a tremendous operation to do this. Really tremendous. It would require special cranes, all sorts of machinery to lift the blocks, special lorries designed. So that's the truth. We have this amazing mystery. And then what we find, and here comes, of course, why people think there might be alien intervention, is that the pyramid is designed using a mathematic that supposedly didn't exist for another 2,000 years. Mathematics that the Greeks were supposed to have developed 2,000 years later. The pyramid contains the constant of pi, which is the constant required to work out the area and circumference and all the values of a sphere or a circle. It contains the golden section in its design. It contains prime numbers and prime numbers in series. It's amazing. It's like it's a mathematical design. Now, if you combine the fact that it is using astronomy, that it has shafts within the chambers pointing to star systems like Orion and Sirius, the circumpolar stars, and when you combine this with the mathematics, whether we like it or not, this pyramid is locked and expressing itself in what today we would call a universal language. It can be read by anybody who understands mathematics and astronomy. In other words, it can be read universally, not just by us. It can be read by the Chinese. It can be read by people from outer space. It is a monument that is there for anybody to understand, provided you see it as such, rather than a tomb. That's the problem we have today. This is the great mystery of the pyramid, that it may be lying there for intelligent people who have the knowledge and technology to understand it, and it may contain some important message because the people who did it had tremendous knowledge to do it. It's been known for a long time, since the 1830s, when modern scientists began to examine this monument, that the pyramid is placed in such a way, I'm talking about the Great Pyramid, such that the base faces, each side faces one of the cardinal directions. Now, a lot of people say magnetic direction. No, that's not true. It faces the astronomical cardinal directions, very precisely, such that the axis, north-south axis, the meridian axis of the monument, is accurate to about 5% of a single degree. It's kind of Swiss watch accuracy. But more than this, within the Great Pyramid are chambers, two chambers in the superstructure known as the Queen and King's Chamber, from which shoot out shafts. The ones in the King's Chamber shoot right through. The ones in Queen's Chamber go about 60 meters deep with these little doors. Now, it's been known since the 1960s that these shafts were mainly, essentially pointing to star systems which were important to the ancient Egyptians. One of them points to Orion's belt, and another one points to the star Sirius. Now, this is very interesting because the ancient Egyptians say that Orion represented their god of resurrection, their ancestral god, their first pharaoh, if you like, that had come from the stars. And Sirius represents his consort Isis. And the zone in the sky is the zone of the afterlife. It's a kind of heaven of the pharaohs, if you like, in the star world. Now, what I discovered in 1984 was that when you look at the ground plan of the Giza pyramids, which are allocated to three pharaohs of the fourth dynasty, approximately 2500 BC, there are two large pyramids, almost of identical size. You can pass a line through the apex, through the diagonals, but then the third pyramid, which is much smaller, is offset. And nobody had bothered to ask, well, why do we have this bizarre layout? It's obvious that they're all on the same sides, they're all pyramids. It's obvious that there is some sort of plan. The question is, what does the plan mean? Now, because of the connection that we know of the pharaohs, in the pyramid text, they speak of the pharaoh going to Orion. This is his afterlife zone. Because there is a shaft pointing to Orion's belt in the Great Pyramid, it was obvious to look at Orion and see if there is some sort of connection. Well, as amazing as it may be, I'm the first person to say, well, hey, when you look at Orion's belt, where the shaft points, there are three stars, two are of equal magnitude, and the third one is smaller and offset the same way that you see the pyramids on the ground. You have a correlation. Now, if that's a coincidence, one hell of a coincidence. But to add to that scheme, when you take the Sphinx into account and you examine the whole Giza necropolis in one plan, so you have the pyramid and the Sphinx, you find that at the date of 10,500 BC, Orion's belt matches perfectly on the ground. The Egyptian called the Milky Way the Celestial Nile. The Nile matches the position of the Milky Way. And looking east, the Sphinx is looking at its own image, which is the constellation of Leo, at that time. Cannot be a coincidence. What we have here is a simulacra, if you like, or an equivalent map on the ground of what you see in the sky. In other words, they're inviting us to say, look, we've used the sky to draw a map, so it's always there. You work it out. You try and understand what we're trying to tell you. And what they seem to be telling us is that something is under the Sphinx that was put there in 10,500 BC. When you understand this code, if you like. And it has to do with something very intelligent, because we designed the pyramid using prime numbers, using mathematical constants. Work it out. Find out. But in order for you to work it out, you have to be as intelligent as us. You must have the technology we have. And we're it. The only problem is that the Egyptian authorities won't allow us to pursue the investigation.